Hello, dear listeners. Fall is in the air. It's time for the September scaries, including school supplies, parent-teacher conferences, and tuition payments. At least that last one is top of my mind because my oldest child just started college and they said they weren't going to accept all of my quince points. College is one of those crazy things in America that you're told you need in order to get ahead, but it is so much more expensive and so much more attainable than ever. You want to go to the right school, but not a school that will make you seem like an elitist should you ever run for president. You want to be involved in campus activities. You want to make your mark, but don't put anything questionable in writing should you, once again, ever end up running for president. Today, I wanted to talk to all of you college fresh people waking up from the hangover of orientation. If you're spending the next few weeks trying on different classes for size, oh boy, I hope you have some fun with it. If you can even entertain the idea of having some fun with it. Look, I entered college thinking that I was going to be a lawyer, but I ended up with a comedy career. All I'm trying to say is that you might not know exactly what you want to do forever when you're 18, and it's so okay. We don't always encourage people to embrace not knowing the choice to make, but I do think we do need to do more of that. It's okay to live in the unknown for a while. It's okay to test things out. It's okay to be really bad at something and change your mind. If you are lucky enough to get the opportunity to go to college, I hope you squeeze out all the juice from that orange. This is Choice Words. I'm Samantha Bee. My guest today is perhaps, actually undoubtedly, my favorite actor of all time. I feel like I started podcasting just so I could interview her. It is true. Oh, I love Carrie Coon with my entire self. Look, you know Carrie from The Leftovers, which I cannot stop talking about, from The Gilded Age, and her new film, His Three Daughters, is out soon. We talked about how she had close to 50 majors in college, from business to Japanese to English, philosophy, political science. Look, if it existed, she dabbled, and I think that is so great. It certainly helped her to become one of my favorite people ever, so take a listen and make good choices. Okay. So listeners, we've been waiting for this conversation for years, and then we were talking for like 15 full minutes, and technology died, and the Earth's axis shifted, and our entire recording vanished. It was raptured.
Very leftovers.
So we're starting again, and I love it because I want to talk to you forever because you're my absolute favorite. But I'm going to ask Carrie, who is one of the most important people in my life right now.
Just my goodness.
My God.
You're making my face turn pink.
I know you're not going to want to talk to me ever again because I gush too much. And I bet, like, you're Midwestern, I'm Canadian. We don't take compliments well.
No, we don't.
It's horrible.
I know. I keep ducking out of the frame.
I do the same thing. If someone says something nice to me, I start to sweat. My body goes like I want to go inside my own navel. Yes. I want to crawl up inside. Yeah. So
why can't we receive anything? I guess we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. That's what it is in the Midwest, I think.
You're like
something's coming on the other side.
Yeah, you like me now, but just wait.
Just wait. I'm so damaged.
So I'm gonna ask Carrie this very important question about choice again, and I'm hoping that because it is fantastic. We talked about choices and like big swings, a big choice in your life that you think changed the trajectory of absolutely everything, and your answer was incredible.
Well, as I said in our previous iteration, I feel like
Yep.
I never made any choices until I was about 30 because I was such a Midwestern people pleaser.
Right.
Because I was raised Catholic and I
Mm.
came from a big family, middle child,
Yep.
and I was taught to say yes. And I was a very good girl and a very good student. And I also never made any trouble for my parents. I was a very good
Hmm.
girl. I was the class president and the homecoming queen. And I was, by all outward appearances, an incredibly high functioning person. But what I was actually doing is compartmentalizing and
Hmm.
shape shifting to
Right.
accommodate whoever I was talking to. And that's why I was
Right.
popular, right? I could sort of move through any circle socially
Right.
because I was
Right.
just but I also, as I think people like who suffer from this particular affliction feel, never
Hmm.
really felt like I was actually fitting in anywhere. So that's what the
Right.
secret was, right? I looked very successful and very settled, and I was actually incredibly unsettled and uncomfortable in my own
Right.
skin. And
Right.
again, was constitutionally incapable of having any kind of conflict. So I was incapable of advocating for myself in any way,
Hmm.
especially about my emotional needs. And
Right.
as such, I was a terrible girlfriend, as you related to that, Samantha. I was a
Hmm.
serial overlapper because I was incapable of breaking up with anybody. And so I would
Right.
just gather boyfriends
Yep.
and try to juggle them and enlist the help of my entire dorm to help me do that and all my roommates, which was very punishing for everybody
And try
involved.
and try to force them to break up with you.
Yes,
Try to
and
be
like
so
make big
shitty.
mistakes that they would
Yeah.
actually pull the trigger on that. But in fact, it never quite worked out that way.
No.
It's terrible. And I said I actually one time I was dating two boys, and I just, instead of dealing with it, I just left the country. I just signed up to study abroad in Spain. And I thought that was, so, and I
They
was getting
probably I
letters
bet they
from both
waited
of
for
them.
you.
So I came home. I mean, hopefully they never listen to this. I came home the next day after the plane landed. I went to
Yeah.
one's house and I told him what had been going on. And then I went to
Right.
the other guy's house and I told him what had been going on. And then I was on like a hunger strike. Like I fasted for 3 days. It's very Catholic too. You have to punish yourself
Of
for that.
course.
And
Of
then,
course.
I got back together with my first boyfriend for
Stop
like
it.
another
You did
year.
not.
We got back together. We were together until I left for graduate school, which is my big decision that I finally made.
Oh my God.
He's a very
Okay.
dear friend of mine still, actually.
I
But
love him for that, for
I
his
know he's actually kind of a
tenacity.
great guy. Yeah, he's definitely, he ended up where he should be. Let's put it that
Okay,
way.
that's good.
Wasn't with
Okay,
me,
that's good.
but the only decision I ever made was going to graduate school because I had never made
Right.
a decision up to that point. Even my decision to go to undergrad was sort of by default because even though I was a straight A student and had good grades and blah
Hmm.
blah blah, I really hadn't prepared myself for the transition. And because I outwardly looked very competent, nobody was helping me make that transition. So I
Right.
almost went to the Naval Academy, Annapolis Naval Academy, which is insane now when you think about my life. And when I finally ended that process, I had an offer to play soccer at the University of Mount Union. So I just said, okay, because I could afford it. They gave me good
Right.
financial aid, and Kenyon didn't, which is where I wanted to go. And so I could afford to go there. I was on academic scholarship. And I said, my first week, I was a business and Japanese major. And then
That's so funny.
I know it's absurd. Realized very quickly in kanji class that it probably wasn't a natural fit for that
Okay.
trajectory. I was
Hmm.
like, I'll do international business. It's something I heard about on a TV show, I'm sure.
Did you
And so I
speak
went,
Japanese?
no,
Like,
I
why
had
were you?
never had any exposure to Japanese at all. It
What?
was insane. I don't know what I was thinking. And so very quickly I became an education major and I did my
Hmm.
classroom observations. I was in a special education class and I realized that I was not
Okay.
special enough to be a teacher.
Hmm.
And I dropped that. And then I joined the philosophy department.
Right.
And I was flirting with poli sci. Of course, I took no
Sure.
math. I went pure logic after that. So that kind of led me to philosophy. And
Hmm.
then what else did I do? And at that point, I had amassed enough credits in English literature just because that was something I loved. I was always a big reader. So I
Hmm.
had an English literature major by default. And I actually got a Spanish literature degree also. So I did a thesis in English lit, a thesis in Spanish lit. I had a psych minor. I studied abroad in Spain to run away from my boyfriends. And
Great.
my sister's from El Salvador. And so I always had an interest in Spanish anyway. And I was waiting for somebody to tell me what to do. I didn't know what
Right.
to do. And I had worked up a thesis on language acquisition. And as I said before, if you read The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides, you realize what an insufferable cliche my whole life was up until that point. And I was kind of talking to the poli sci department, what could I parlay this into? And
Yeah.
I was looking for some mentor to give me guidance. And finally,
Yeah.
Dr. Hendel in the theater department, I had done maybe 4 or 5 plays. My grandparents
Hmm.
used to pick me up from soccer games and drive me back to school,
Okay.
to to rehearse plays in my university. They were wonderful. They were my mom's parents were always there for me. And he said, I think you should go to graduate school for acting. And he said, you can go to these university/resident theater auditions. I think they still have them. And you can go and audition for all of these graduate programs at once. And I think you could go to graduate school and be an actor. And it had never occurred to me. I had seen a play when I was 10, and I had obviously done 2 plays. So I had a secret hope. One play. I'd seen one play at the Akron Civic Theater. Beautiful atmospheric theater. My friend's parents took me because my mom didn't drive us anywhere because she worked nights. And so if you wanted to go somewhere, you had to get a ride. I ended up going to the Palmer House in Chicago with my mom and her sisters and my grandma. And they were just like trash. They were just drinking martinis the whole weekend. While I walked into these rooms where all these people, some of them had been out in the world being actors and who were now, because the economy was just kind of starting to turn. It was still good. So people didn't generally go to acting school right out of undergrad. They wanted you to have experience in the world before you got in. So it was already unlikely I was going to get in. So all these guys were like, these people are stretching and doing vocal exercises. And I'm just standing there like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. And so the stakes were kind of low because I thought there was no chance in hell I was going to get in. I had worked up a monologue from Imogen and Cymbeline. And then, the Heidi Chronicles, like you say, was the last play my professor had probably seen.
So cute.
God bless you, Dr. Hendel.
Oh.
And then I ended up getting called back to Rutgers and got on their waiting list, but they never invited me to the program. And then the UW-Madison, Wisconsin called me, literally a couple of weeks before school started, to offer me their final spot in their group of 10 actors for 3 years in a program that they were revamping. And I said to my parents, I said, do you think I should go to grad school for acting? That seems very impractical. And they were like, what the hell? Why not? And so I got in my car and I drove to Wisconsin and I found an apartment by the Capitol and then spent 3 years banging around in Wisconsin, that famous art school.
That most world-renowned.
I believe polymer science is really their focus. Because the actors are kept in the basement of a brutalist building. The most uninspiring space.
Academy Award-winning actors. Left, right, and center. Yes,
I believe that program is now defunct, but yeah.
That was the revamp. They were like, we're going to wind it down.
All the way down.
This story is incredible to me. And first of all, I want to remark that, thank God you took a bunch of weird risks in college. And I wish that more people actually could do that because it helps you to narrow your focus, or you need to try a bunch of weird shit.
Study abroad.
Study abroad.
And go to a school where you have that flexibility to change majors 100 times.
I went to college in Canada when it cost me $800 my first semester, and I took calculus. So it was because I was like, I should try
ruling that out.
I should try advanced math because I never tried it before. But what if I'm a genius?
I bet I'm great.
And I was the worst student they've ever had. They were
Incredible.
Get out.
Congratulations.
They were get the fuck out of this class. But what a beautiful, it's a beautiful story. It's risk and choice and just doing something fucking wild. At what point in the program did you go, oh, I am actually going to do this? This is actually what I want. I want this.
Well, comically, I was teaching acting as a TA, which took a little while to find my footing there. So that was interesting. And I think, so I had a great voice teacher. Her name was Susan Sweeney, Sweeney. She's still alive. Please say what.
Susan, sorry.
And she had taught at the PTTP in Delaware, which is this famous program that was started in Est, from the 70s. That's sort of weird. Yep. Breaking you down and remaking you. So the actors in that program have a very particular vocabulary. It's kind of strange. Alumni world that they come from. And so she brought some of those just amazing voice work and old school voice work. Like what we call the International Phonetic Alphabet, how you learn dialects, the Edith Skinner method. So really old school voice work. And I loved it. I was an English lit major, obviously. It was rooted in language for me. The language made sense to me. So that was a really, and I was a cerebral actor. I would always read books around the thing I was doing. I wasn't necessarily in my body. I was an athlete and I understood the symmetry between the flow state that you're in as an athlete and the flow state you're in as an artist. That made sense to me too. So that was always a strength. I was connected to my body in a way that I think, frankly, a lot of Americans probably aren't. Certainly a lot of Midwesterners aren't. But that voice work, I literally found my voice in that class. Because I had, I think, never taken a deep breath in my life. And I
Mhm.
sounded like a pirate. I come from the A sound and the R's.
Oh,
I had
yeah.
never really heard myself talking like that.
Uh-huh.
You go to
Yep.
Wisconsin, it gets worse. I still hear it. I did an audition yesterday, and the Midwestern A that was popping out in my audition was hilarious. Anyway,
Oh, yeah. When you go back there, do you slide right back into
oh,
it? Oh,
of course.
instantly. For me, when I go to
Yeah.
Canada,
It's like, there
instantaneous.
you are. Wherever you go, there you
Yep.
are.
Wherever
Oh,
you
yeah.
go.
The people start talking, and there you go. My family's getting worse, I think. But the voice work really spoke to me. And,
Yeah.
I have to say, I talked about this in a New Yorker profile a number of years ago. One of the things we
Mhm.
haven't talked about is I was also a compulsive skin picker, which was another big
Mm.
secret I had in my life.
Yeah.
It had been happening since I was 2 years old. I never picked my face, so people didn't see it, but it was the rest
Okay.
of my body. And the thing that I had come to understand is that what that impulse is about absence. It's about taking yourself out of the present in order to
Mm.
process whatever. Or you do it when you're bored, when you're hungry, when you're tired, when you're
Right.
sad. And it's brain chemistry, right? You're creating actually like a little dopamine spike. And I
Uh-huh.
was so addicted, and I was incapable of being still. And the breath work is what led me to meditation, which is what led me to sort of try to create space between the moment of impulse and the actual action.
Uh-huh.
And that work was what led me into therapy. And so, graduate school was this door opening into becoming a more integrated person, right? And
Wow.
healing myself and using art, using the
Uh-huh.
process of becoming an actor. It actually was the gateway to profound healing in my life and in my body. Now, that healing wouldn't come full circle until I turned 30 when I met Tracy
Okay.
and I did Virginia Woolf. That was another huge transition in my life.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't gone to graduate school, I honestly don't know how I would have turned out, because mentally I was not a healthy person.
Right.
But nobody could tell. Nobody could tell.
Nobody could tell. There are so many, I mean, talk about sliding doors. There are so many
Mm-hmm.
paths you might have taken
Yeah.
just because they were a little bit easier or more expected in a
Yes.
way. Like
Expected. Mm-hmm.
expected,
Yeah.
like law school, whatever.
Right.
Just like you've
Yeah.
got your degree now. You want to be able to pay a mortgage. You want to have like
Mm-hmm.
health insurance. So you got to get a
Right.
job. So what's the
And
job?
settle down and have your
Settle
family.
down,
I'm
have a
sure
family.
my grandparents thought I would marry the quarterback. They thought I was that
Sure.
girl. When I brought
Yeah.
home an old playwright, who wrote like dirty plays. Everybody was very disconcerted. They're like, he's so old.
Wait a second. Hold on. What does he do
Yeah.
again?
What is he writes these
What?
dirty, dirty little plays?
Did you think that you would be primarily a theater actor? Like what kind of
I
like
was. The other gift that UW-Madison gave me was they brought in a lot of professionals. So
okay.
I ended up being invited to participate in Our Town.
Hmm.
Richard Corley was the artistic director at the time, and I ended up doing Our Town as a professional with Andre DeShields, the great Andre DeShields, playing the stage manager. And
Wow.
that was I actually got credit for that, even though it was a professional show. And then
Hmm.
I ended up going back to the Madison Repertory Theater, RIP, it's a great space, and doing Anna Christie and oh
Okay.
gosh, Anne Frank. I ended up working professionally at that theater for a number of years.
Hmm.
Likewise, they invited the artistic director of the American Players Theater in Wisconsin. It's a gorgeous place. It was just written up in the Times this week,
Oh.
actually, as a
Oh.
wonderful regional theater. It's one of the
Oh,
only
great.
theaters that still has a company. So I
Oh,
ended
wow.
up, after graduate school, I went immediately out there to do an apprenticeship.
Hmm.
And at that apprenticeship, I met a lot of directors who were based around the country at other Shakespeare theaters, but also in Chicago, which of course was the closest big city, and a
Yeah.
midwestern city, so very relatable for me.
Hmm.
And I was in that company for 4 years. That was almost eight
Right.
months of my life for 4 years. And you pick blackberries and swim in the river, and then you go rehearse Shakespeare, and then you perform it under a
Oh,
full moon. I mean, it's a really special place, and you're
wow.
also filling an 1,100 seat house. So
Right.
you have to find in your body and in your voice how
Hmm.
to be in that space truthfully, but reaching the back of the house. That
Right.
education, I just feel like so few young actors get that kind of education anymore in
Yeah.
acting. That scale, to try to tell the truth at that scale, you can almost do anything after that.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
I would have been very content to be a company member at that theater. I love that theater. And I thought that's where I was headed. I was really gunning to be in the company at American
Hmm.
Players Theater. I really wanted it. But I started to get commercials in Chicago. And then
Hmm.
my third year in Chicago, that was when I was finally cast in the main stage at Steppenwolf by Erica Daniels, who had been my judge at the Erda auditions. when I had no idea what Steppenwolf Company was.
Wow.
And she had advocated for me in Chicago. She had put some auditions in my way, and she kept calling me into Steppenwolf. She
Right.
I don't know if she remembered me from the Erdas, but
Okay. I was
she
going to
claimed
say,
she
did
did.
she? Okay.
But I think
Nice.
she claimed she did, and she always invited me to audition, and eventually I finally got the main stage job that I had coveted. And that's when I started to understand I did have instincts about
Right.
material, and I knew what was good for me and what I was going to be good at, and I knew what roles weren't mine. The roles belonged to somebody else.
Right.
And that became really clear. And that's where I met Tracy. And that's when my life got really kind of shifted into the next phase.
Right. How do you choose projects, or do projects choose you? Do you choose, or is it like a meeting of the minds? Because I mean, and people write parts for you. They think of you. They write the part for you now.
That's happening now. Yeah. When you're younger, you say yes. When you're younger, you say yes, and you get chosen, and you wait for people to choose you, and you have no control.
Right.
Then you get to the privileged position I'm in, where you get to choose what to say yes to. And for us, I would say in our house, Pulitzer Prize winning playwright husband, always it's the writing. That's the first and foremost consideration. Because if it's not on the page, it's not on the stage, as we like to say. And no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to fix it. So we look for writing.
Truer words have never been spoken. My husband and I talk about that all the time, because we also work in this business together, and we're like, if the writing's not there, there is literally nothing you can do to go in and fix it. It just is what it is. You can.
So if you're not willing to accept what it is, then don't sign up.
You can bring your whole heart to it, but you can't make it real.
No, you can't. And I don't know if anybody even knows anymore what's good, but we can talk about that later.
Right. Oh,
but good writing. And then secondly, is it asking something from me that I haven't done before, or that is compelling or interesting to me? Is it seeing me in a new way, right? Is it asking for more of me than has been asked previously? And then, of course, the third thing you have to say is, what will this do in terms of the advancement or the longevity of my career? What does it contribute? And of course, included in that is sometimes the financial consideration, which is this one of those jobs you can't really afford to turn down because now you have 2 children and 2 nannies?
Yeah.
There's that job too.
Now you got to play for college. You got to play the game a little bit.
Exactly. Paying for elementary school is hard enough. If you like I say, my son, I think, is somebody who needed that. And I'm a public school kid, and I believe in public school. But man, my kid needed something else. And my gosh, it's just so painful.
Oh, it's all very painful. It is painful to write a check to
and a privilege to be able to do it, of course.
Privilege, yes, of course. Oh my God, I have so many questions for you. Okay, I was, I was so familiar with your work on such a deep level. I mean, we talked all about this. None of you can listen to it because it disappeared.
Doesn't exist anymore.
Into the
ephemeral, like all of us.
But you, and I was also reading about what other people have, because I know how I feel about your work, but I wanted to read how other people define it in a way or talk about it. And I read something that Damon Lindelof wrote, which is that you tune into a dangerous frequency. And that to me was the most, that I thought hit to the actual, that was like the button. That was the one for me, because I think that's so true. You tune into a frequency that is very dangerous, and like a darkness. In all the light, in all the everything, there's something so deep. And it just resonates with me so hard. You just go there.
Oh, that means a lot to me. I think it started young. I used to wake up during Johnny Carson and come out of my room and say, I was 5 or 6. I'd be like, so Jesus, let's talk about Jesus. When's he coming back? And my parents are like, he's not coming back in your life. I'm like, you don't know that. Nobody knows when Jesus is coming back. But am I going to get married and have children? Like,
do I have time before
totally
the
obsessed
world
with the apocalypse?
Ends?
Totally obsessed. I love mummies.
Oh my God, me too. Did you ever have, oh my gosh, when I'm a little older than you. I'm 54.
Barely.
Thank you.
You look great.
Just fresh out of college. But we had King Tut was like a huge, when I was 10, it was like King Tut.
Totally.
And I had a friend who had a t-shirt that said, "Don't touch my tuts," with 2 little tuts on it.
Oh my God, we have to resurrect that.
I have
Do you have a
to.
store for your podcast? You have to put that
I
in your store.
It's the only item that would ever be in the store. Don't touch my tuts. But this is
Oh
all
my
to
God, I
say,
would totally buy that.
I thought of
Death.
death. I'm an
Yes.
only child, but
Oh, wow.
I obsessed with and
Uh-huh.
still, and still there's that core interest in
Mhm.
mummies and what does it look like? So,
Yeah,
which I guess a lot of the material that you grapple with has to do
yeah,
with death and has to do with,
it does.
different planes of different dimensions of existence. And
Mhm.
the new film that I just saw is
Mhm.
his three daughters. It's so beautiful. And you know what? It's like a play. It
It is
is,
like a play.
it is
Mhm.
like a play. And it opens with your monologue.
Yeah.
You just it's the entry point to the whole world. And it's really beautiful. Okay, so you're with Natasha Lyonne, Elizabeth Olsen. All
Mhm.
of you are great. And you play three sisters who return home as your father is dying. Two sisters return home to the one sister who's already
Mhm.
there. And it is full of conflict. And I got to tell you, there
You
was
like
one,
that?
I deeply liked it. There was one moment where your character is battling with Natasha Lyonne's character
Mhm.
in particular. Everybody brings their own thing to the table. And there's a moment where she kind of walks out of frame. And I know, as a person who knows how the sausage is all being made, she's walking toward the camera and your eyes follow her. And the look in your eyes, the seething, the seething was so deeply felt by me. I was like, if anyone ever looked at me like that, I would cease to exist in 1 second. And I was like, and you know what? I know what Carrie's looking at. I know she's looking at 15 people who are standing there with sandwiches and a bunch of cables
Yeah, yeah.
and a lot of lights. And still, it doesn't sound like you played that role in your own family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Like,
was more of a harmonizer. I mean, I was responsible, and I am a
yeah.
know-it-all. I
Oh,
still
good.
firmly believe that if my siblings did everything I told them to do, their lives would be better.
Oh my
Which
God.
they, it's so annoying. They hate it.
I love that so much. I would just wish. I feel like people should just ask us how they want the world
Yeah,
run. We could tell
we'll
them.
we'll fix it. It's probably about time for the ladies to get a shot, don't you think?
Listen, I say this all the time. I'm like, you need to give control of all the levers of power
Everything,
to women
everything.
just for 5 years.
Just let us give you 5 years.
Watch us go for
Yeah,
5 years. If
yeah,
you don't like things better, at the end of 5 years, you can have the whole thing back. You can have that whole enchilada back and you can fuck
that's
around
right.
with it as much as you want.
Hmm. But give
But
us 5 years.
you're not gonna want it. You're not gonna
Mm-mm.
want it back because we're gonna
No,
fix it. Do
that's
you
right.
oh wow, yeah. You're from
Hmm.
Ohio. You love it. You must be
Yeah.
loving JD Vance right now. Just
Oh my
bringing
gosh.
a whole new
Trolling
glow.
JD Vance and Frank LaRose is like half of my life right now. I know it's just Twitter, but
Oh,
man, I went to school with
yeah.
Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State, and
Oh
I
wow.
find the implosion of JD Vance gives me so much pleasure every single day because he has done absolutely nothing for Ohio and absolutely nothing for
Right.
my family. So
Right.
there.
Absolutely nothing. Oh boy. I
Mm-mm.
can't wait for that. I'm so excited for the debate, the
Oh, I
VP
can't
debate, which they
wait.
just ooh, ooh,
Yeah,
ooh, ooh, ooh.
I get goosebumps thinking about it.
You're very active. You're very political. You talk
Hmm.
about climate change a lot. Do
Hmm.
you okay. When I mean, obviously the climate's changing. We've talked about it already. We've referenced it 10 times in this interview because we both feel
Yeah,
that way. And I
yeah,
got my little solar panels. I'm ready
yeah.
to
I'm
go for whatever.
jealous.
But how do I mean, it was so hard even working on even having my TV shows. Really, anytime we
Hmm.
did anything climate themed, people
Yes.
literally turned off their televisions and you could track it. You
Yeah.
could track the data and you'd be like,
Hmm.
this is the point where you said climate is when
Yeah.
everybody went and
It's incredible. Hmm.
went to the bathroom and turned you off and went and read a book instead.
Hmm.
Um, do you see that changing? Do you see more engagement just from your own
Not soon
perspective?
enough.
No.
No, I think you know what it's going to take. I hate to say this out loud, but what it's
Hmm.
going to take is a mass dying event that happens
Right.
because of wet bulb temperatures in some place like Texas.
Right.
If overnight suddenly 12,000 people die because their
Hmm.
sweat won't evaporate, people are going to say, "Wait a minute, And
Hold
at
on.
that point, it will be too late because we really have, I mean, if you're paying attention to any of the really like wonky climate scientists right now, we
Right.
have the tipping points, some of the stuff that's happening around us is not what they anticipated at all. It's happening at such an
Right.
accelerated rate. And they're like, we have 3 months,
Oh gosh.
3 months to mitigate, or we're going to
Oh,
hit, I mean, the temperatures we're going to hit in my children's lifetime. I mean, they're going to be in their 20s when we hit these.
right.
And of course, the poor people will die first, and
Right.
people won't care. It happens all the time. It's happening right now. Poor people
Hmm.
are already dying.
Hmm.
500 people died in one night on the Hajj. People didn't pay any
Right.
attention to that news.
No.
It's going to take white people dying somewhere for other white people to say, oh no, what have we
Hey,
done?
they'll be like, why didn't you tell us that there was
Yeah.
something, that there was a problem?
Yeah. Hey guys. And the thing is, it's because I think people shut down because on some level they know what it requires is sacrificing the
Right.
entire way of life that we're living, and
Right.
people just can't even, they're trying to pay the bills and they can't reckon with it. I mean, most people can't
Right.
even recycle. They don't have the bandwidth because part of what late stage capitalism does, it keeps people enslaved to that machine.
Right.
And it's it's impossible. You cannot thrive in that machine.
Right.
It intentionally keeps you running. And so you don't have time to pay attention to these things, which are unfortunately existential. And no, I don't know that it's going to take something really catastrophic.
Mm.
I think we're seeing, we saw climate move up the list of concerns as people
Right.
get polled in the presidential race. And I think
Hmm.
people who do know, and young people certainly know how screwed they are.
Right.
I think that's part of the enthusiasm, because we know if we have a Republican administration, they're
Oh.
literally going to take away the EPA,
Oh.
any climate issues. So we're already behind. And if they take away even the very small effort we've made, then we're just dead so much faster. But we are dead. I
Yes.
mean, I really believe that.
Right. I mean, we're all cruising toward our
Mhm.
death.
Yeah, which is why I'm not going to get Botox. Like, it's just something, you're not going to maintain your Botox in the apocalypse. No one's going to be around to shoot your face full of Botox. So I'm not going to
No.
do it because it doesn't matter.
No. All the Botox is boiled. It doesn't work anymore. It's
Oh, is
too
that right?
hot. I
Oh,
don't.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
exactly. It just melts out of your face.
it just melts right out of your face.
And that's why I
Do you,
just don't care about so many other
I,
life.
oh
I
God.
mean, I hope that making entertainment is at least doing no harm,
I think it
but
does no harm. I think it does no harm, and it's needed.
the
It's
Gilded Age is
actually needed.
palliative care. Yeah, I call
It
it palliative
is.
care. Yeah.
You do need a moment. You do need a moment at the end.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as a person who works primarily or has worked in comedy, the only thing I want to watch is everyone literally getting raptured.
That
I
tracks for me
can't.
with comedians. Comedians are the darkest people.
Darkest.
You
Yeah.
guys are the darkest
I know.
people.
Everyone's like, "What fun? What's your summer beach
You're
read?"
the
I'm like,
most
"I'm reading a book
messed up.
about the
Yeah.
Holocaust.
Nuclear
Do you
war.
want to?"
Yeah. Can I get
I'm
it till
gonna
I'm finished?
gonna reread Chernobyl because it's a
Yeah.
page turner.
Hitler, Ascent. Just making my way through that for the second time.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So you and your husband,
Mhm.
you both, I mean, just as I stated prior to our interview departing,
Yes.
you are my power couple. Like you're the power couple, the entertainment powerhouses that I look to. Because I like that my husband and I are in the
Mhm.
same industry. I think it's
Yeah,
helpful. The
I do too.
language is shared. Do
Yes.
you feel that?
Absolutely. We love working together. Tracy and I
Yeah.
haven't worked together a lot on camera, but we've done a lot of theater together. I've
Yeah.
done a lot of his plays, mostly that he's written. Very little
Mhm.
acting on stage together, but we
Right.
worked really well together. And I it's so important to have a partner because I suffer from that midwestern affliction of people pleasing, right? Of
Yeah.
taking such a long time to be able to hear my own voice, to be able to feel like an integrated
Right.
woman. It is very important to me to have a partner who can reflect me back to me in a
Right.
way that's very affirmative. And so I do trust my gut more, but
Mhm.
I still rely on him to
Right.
confirm how I feel. And it's so important to have somebody in my life that does that, because
Yeah.
I haven't been practicing it for that long relative to the
Right.
rest of my life. And he's so great at it. He's 15 years older than me, and he's
Mhm.
lived many, many lives. He never wields his experience like a cudgel.
Right.
He always lets me come to my own conclusions. He's
Mhm.
somebody who he never gives unsolicited advice, Samantha.
What?
I find it extraordinary. And he gives great advice. You have to ask him.
You have to ask him. Oh my
and then he'll give
God.
you advice. But he doesn't just walk around. And so every time he's on a job, women just fall in love with him because he just asks questions.
Oh,
Because he genuinely loves women. He loves them, and
right.
he thinks we're the superior gender, and he respects us. And so to have that kind of partner in my life and in my
Wow.
work, and helping me decide when I am on the fence about a project,
Right.
he's the only opinion that matters to me.
Right. Right. Right.
And
What
of
a
course the logistics of our
The
family.
logistics. Yeah, the logistics are difficult, but they're
So hard.
challenging, but they're not impossible. I think they're
No.
actually people are always like, how do you do it with the two? I'm like, it's easier than if two people had Wall Street jobs and you have to
Oh
be
yeah.
there at like 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 to
Yes, it's so annoying that our
9.
kids don't understand how other children live. It's like, you actually see me a lot. You
I
think you don't
know.
see me? You see me a lot. A lot of
Oh,
kids
I
don't see
know.
their parents the whole week.
Don't you love it when your kids are like, you're gone. You've been gone. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'm
Where are you
here
going?
all the
I'm here all the
time.
time. I just spent the entire weekend with you. You never bank any points with kids. You never bank
No,
anything.
you never do. When
Mine are
do
still
you?
young, and it's so tedious.
Oh, it's so you
But
know
it
what
doesn't
is
count.
You know what's fun is good that they actually, well, it's great. It is great because I have like all mine are teenagers. They
Yeah.
actually need you more in a different
That's what I've
way
heard.
it's really nice. It's actually great. I like
Oh,
it.
that's good to hear. Some people, I mean, I've heard it's right. Little kids, little problems. Big kids, big problems. So I
It's,
always thought it'd be harder to do this career when they're younger, but I'm starting to understand that it actually will get harder when they're older
I
to
think
be
it gets
away.
harder when they're older because
Hmm.
their psyches need you more. Like they don't need
Yes.
you to make dinner for them, but they
Hmm.
need you to be there and
Hmm.
they need you to say no to them at the right
Interesting.
time.
Yes.
Isn't
Oh,
that
that's really, no, that's interesting to hear. I want to hear more about all of
How did you learn
that.
how to say no? How did you, because I don't think as a people
Uh-huh.
pleaser, current and former, it's very hard to say no to
Very
people.
hard. And
Very
I think
hard.
it's hard for every woman. I think
Yeah.
we're all always learning it all the time. But I have a very clear moment where it was brought to my attention.
Mm.
My grandmother, my grandma Dee and my grandpa Bill, they retired in their 50s because they were T-boned by a drunk driver and they almost didn't survive, but they did.
Oh, oh
And so
my
they were
God.
retired for most of my childhood. And so they really helped raise us. I mean, my parents had 5 kids. They both worked full time. There's
Okay.
no way we all would have survived without grandma Dee and grandpa Bill. They used to drive
Hmm.
me from my,
Right.
soccer games to my play rehearsals. And I remember distinctly, I think I was home from college and she was on the phone. She was in her 70s. And there was this
Hmm.
widower who had been calling her. He'd lost his wife. And my grandmother was a really nice woman.
Yep.
And he was calling her and he was talking to her on the phone for, she couldn't say no. She couldn't say no to him. She couldn't hang
Oh,
up. And she was in a conversation and she finally said in that moment, I'm so sorry, John, or whatever his name was.
yeah.
I just can't have this conversation right now. I have to go. And she hung up and she sat there for a second and she said, my God, she said, listen to me. If you can learn how to say no now, you will be so far ahead of any woman because she said, Carrie, I am in my 70s and I am still learning and I'm still struggling to say no. And
Oh,
it was a very vivid moment. And this is a woman too, who when I was dating 2 boyfriends,
yeah.
she wrote me a letter when I was doing my 3-day punishing, fast when I was breaking up with everybody and
Yep.
punishing myself in a very Catholic way. She wrote
Definitely.
me a letter because she was worried about me. And she said, pity is not the same as love. And
Mm.
you are not respecting or dignifying someone else by staying in something where, that you don't want to be in. And just that pity is not the same thing as love. There were these
Wow.
seeds she was planting in me. And
Yeah.
it took them a long time to come to fruition. It's taken a long
Oh.
time for me to learn how to say no. But I think being in my 40s is so empowering. I loved my 30s. It was a life-changing decade for me.
Hmm.
I really, in terms of my mental health, my marriage, I had my first child when I was 37.
Hmm.
And my 40s, it just gets easier and easier to say no. And
It
I love
does.
saying no. I
Hmm.
love it.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
really empowering. And I tell young women the same thing. Start practicing.
Practice saying
And I
no.
say, and just like, that you're not dignifying anyone by
By
kind of not being fully expressed.
Yeah,
You're not actually helping anybody,
you're
prolonging things.
prolonging their
Yes.
agony because the answer is the
And they're
same.
not allowed to, exactly. And they're not allowed to move on to the life that they're supposed to be living.
Yes.
This is not your
Yes.
life. You want to be living your life.
I love grandmother wisdom
Oh, me
so
too.
much. Oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. You know what is
But
it's so funny because we're talking so much about like how we learned to say no and figured out how to be
mhm.
less of a people pleaser. Never not a people pleaser, just less of one, you know?
Right.
And then we create these children who are not at all people pleasers.
Oh, no.
Which is great, which is what we want for them, but it actually makes it really hard to parent.
Yes, it really does. And I am going to be up against it with this girl. This girl is, I've never met anybody like her. She's really been put on this earth to test me.
She's going to be so herself. And
she doesn't do anything she doesn't want to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
She wears no pants.
Yep.
She's like, I'm not wearing pants.
We don't do this.
Anyway,
not today.
I do want to talk to you about this.
I do.
More.
I do also. Oh my God. Thank you so much we did it.
We did it. Did we record it? Is it recording?
We recorded it. We did it. That was Carrie Coon, and I had no choice but to look up one thing. She mentioned that she almost went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis for college. I was shocked. Her life would have been so different. I mean, do they even have a theater program there? Well, the answer is no. But they do have a theater group called the Masqueraders, at least. Thanks for joining us. I'm Samantha Bee. See you next week for some more Choice Words. Thank you for listening to Choice Words, which was created by and is hosted by me. The show is produced by Tzvia Baron-Reinstein with editing and additional producing by Josh Richmond. We're distributed by Lemonada Media, and you can find me at RealSamB on X and Instagram. Follow Choice Words wherever you get your podcasts or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership.